like it's kind of romantic thing, like the love for knowledge, and it's pretty romantic, and it's kind of like, sometimes I didn't really believe them, but otherwise I don't find any other explanation why they stick in academia, because they could have, with their PhDs, they could have been doing anything else they want.
Yeah.
And they stick in academia because they really find like excitement in what they do. And well, that's my personal...
Yes, thank you. I wanted to say, yes, I find it unfortunate, I find it a little weakness of the data I presented that I did not make this distinction which you made. How satisfied are you with various aspects of employment and work? In this academic profession, we only ask overall. But in university graduates, we made this distinction and say how you assess, I don't know, your income, your degree of autonomy, your let's say your job as being exciting and challenging, and something like this. And then we could make a correlation. What do they to say to overall satisfaction, and how is it related to these different dimensions? And this morning when we were sitting together and said, what is a good job for university graduates? We could use this methodologically, exactly the same strategy which you're saying, looking at different dimensions and then saying, how are you overall satisfied? And in the case of university graduates, we found out that for the students, for being satisfied, most important are issues like autonomy, challenging job, and relationship between my knowledge and my work tasks. Those three are very important, highly important for overall satisfaction. Income and position only middle level important. And then certain things like chance to change the world, or having a lot of leisure time, and having a regular day, and something like this, they were, let's say, only a minority, were saying strongly. And you are right, we have to ponder this further, to see what is really, what are the aspects which are driving really somebody to say, I'm satisfied. Maybe you're right, your hypothesis, that if he had asked income, so maybe Mexican professors would not have said, oh, it is wonderful, my income. Maybe you're right. Yes, it's convincing what you say. But when putting all the things together, I said, do I have a job which fits my knowledge and is demanding task and something, then this might have more explanatory power to the overall satisfaction. Yes.
I had some comments, very specific, on the teaching and learning methods. I remember that people answer what they believe is the best teaching method. They usually do that in Mexico. So if you ask them if they teach by the blackboard, they will say, of course not. So each one of the working in teams, projects, or research, everything that is valued by itself, and they're going to answer according to the question, not to the reality. And that happens a lot. In another thing I had with the identity, I was thinking how many Mexican professors speak of la facultad, as if you knew exactly which one they're speaking of, the philosophy, faculty of philosophy of the National University. So they tend to unify in just one, their faculty and their facultad. How is it? Faculty. It's school, a discipline, and the university. And everybody has to know that if they're talking of la facultad, it's the faculty of philosophy, or if you're talking with a sociologist, he's going to say the same thing, la facultad.
Yeah, but we have asked three different things. Yeah, we had asked the discipline, the faculty, and the university.
Okay.
And it was very clear that discipline or field or however call it is number one. Yeah, so there you would find in all this more than 90% saying positive, and in scale points, this was percentage we made out of scale points, you find even more differences. Whereas in the Latin American countries there was no important difference what they said affiliation to facultad and affiliation to university. Whereas in those countries where affiliation to universities is very low, here like Germany and Britain, there was a more positive affiliation with the faculty. Yeah, so maybe they would say my discipline in Germany, I have the data not here, but maybe 80% of German would say I'm affiliated to my discipline, and maybe 60% saying to my faculty, and here, as you said, 46 to university. But as I said, in Latin America, it was interesting for us that the difference between facultad and university were absolutely marginal.
That's what I say. They tend to unite faculty, university, and discipline, all the three together.
Yes, whereas we would make more a difference. No?
And the last thing is that as of 1984, the scholars, Mexican scholars, full-time teachers and researchers, started what I would say has been a very aggressive project for finding benefits for themselves. But very, very aggressive. So now we have scholarships, we have higher, we have all sort of stimuli, economic stimuli, we have research funds, and if you belong to this high club of the national researchers, then you really should be thankful for being there, because there's been privilege after privilege, and the elder you get, the higher the privilege. It is not a pyramid that is growing on the base, it's growing on the top.
Now, it is very interesting for me as an outsider to hear these stories about Mexico, but I also from outside, and what I have heard from many colleagues, I really believe that there was a Mexican policies and say, we want to catch up. You remember with OECD membership and being, let's say, economically, and also we want to catch up, in whatever, on the way to knowledge society and knowledge economy. But as far as I understand what you said and others of you said, this was undertaken in Mexico quite diversely in the system. This was not, let's say, upgrading everything more or less equally, but it was more vertical stratification.
Just the privilege.
It's right. It was combined in Mexico by an increasing vertical stratification within the university system. Which what I understand, what you said to me on other occasions, but and other people say. Yes, and this is interesting, but I would say I know countries which had enormous vertical stratification, but had some stratification similar to Mexico before 20 years ago, and were in a similar situation where I would not say that they have put all the energy in more vertical stratification. So I would just say Korea is a case for me. Of course, they had historically a more stratified system than, let's say, Germany or Sweden or whatever, or Switzerland. Clearly so. But I mean, they did not fight to stretch it even more.
We should learn.
And it is enormous. You have a lot of private universities in Korea which are highly accepted as in research, whereas in some countries private never came up yeah, in this kind of research group. Yeah? So as I said, it's not the same in all emerging countries. Yeah, what has happened in Mexico. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, actually, my question has to do with age, because to what extent age is a factor? When you compare, Jesus Galaz was participating in the first survey, I think was the Carnegie.
Yeah, yeah.
It was like more than 10 years ago.
Yes.
And then he's participating in CAP. And they have written several papers comparing data.
Yeah, yeah.
One of the most interesting data, in my opinion, is the age mean in each study for Mexico. How faculty in Mexico has become older and older. And to what extent, when you think about these results, the CAP, the latest, you can show and you can talk about this faculty who by now is better positioned because of these programs and is in better conditions because there have been all these transformations. And to the question about whether you recommend or no someone younger to become a faculty position has to do more with that. With really, you know, the situation of how difficult it is today to find a faculty position, for instance, in a full-time faculty position, like in Mexico, is really very difficult.
Yeah, first of all, yes, you're right. You have looked at this, what is already available in publications, and I can confirm that you say we have done this one study in 1992 and one in 2007 and 2008, and we can measure some change over time. And in terms of age composition, there's no change in economically advanced countries. Yeah, so the age composition in US or in Germany or Britain, and no important change, small things here and there. Whereas in what we call in the emerging countries, you could say, yes, there were several in which the average age was higher, in the second survey. Yes, and you're right, with this we can explain with saying this is a certain degree after an expansion phase with young people, a maturation, stabilization of the system if the average age goes up. But then there's a second point which I didn't present you in the data. This is a question, do the young people answer to this differently than the older people? Okay, and there we find that the people in higher, we usually, most of the time, we did not look at age, but we were looking at seniority. We said, on the one hand, we made a group of seniors, which we put in terms of United States, let's say, full professors and associate professors, and junior, we'd put assistant professors, lecturers, or however they might be named in the different countries. And there we found out, for instance, if we're talking about satisfaction, that there's a stronger satisfaction of the senior than of the junior. And that you have also a more positive assessment of the resources by the people, by the professors than by other academics. And
because they have them.
Yeah, it's right. They are in power. They have it, whereas the others only partly are in the process of grabbing. So I find this completely normal. And this was both true in the early, in the first survey in 1992 and 2007. There were some changes by countries. You see, for instance, in Germany, the young people 15 years ago were very negative in those respects. Now it's a smaller difference to the professors. So there are variations by country, but by and large, we have this difference. But I think both things don't say very much to the point which you, said. When now we ask the people, it's a good time for people to, now where I have it? Yeah, here I have it. Eh? This is a good time for young people to start an academic career. It is not true that the young people had there a more positive view than the elder people. There I do not see any generational, a big element of generational and positional element. seems to be there relatively small in the data.
Thank you. Is just a comment about the Mexican case.
Yeah.
And the conditions, the structural conditions in Mexico. I was thinking, for example, in the indigenous people, and this idea about the privilege of education. For indigenous people, that is what I'm studying on my thesis.
Yeah.
The fact of enter to the university is just a privilege.
Yeah.
Then, for example, I was making interviews with undergraduate students, indigenous, all of them, and I was very surprised because I asked, well, you have a job? No, I don't have a job. And are you satisfied about your career? Yes, I am. And I said, why?
Yeah, yes, I
You don't have a job, you are not studying, and you are really satisfied about what you make in the university. And I think it's a social cause. Because they said, okay, I'm indigenous, I'm really poor, and if I have an university career, it's a very, very important thing in my life. And not only for me, for my family and for my community. And it's, I think the economic conditions in Mexico are the people is happy. The result is that the people is happy without a job, even without a job. But they said, okay, I am the first on my family to have a career, for example, and that is a privilege. Then it's a thing. Then it's not a good result, but maybe it could be something important for them, no, for all too.
Yes. Well, this is, I believe it's a very fascinating example or story you gave. You know, the Japanese Nobel Prize winner, Oe Kenzaburo, Oe, how you like to phrase it. Yeah, I remember he was the most famous work why he got the Nobel Prize practically was an autobiographic story. It's called a very personal matter, and the main story is that they had a handicapped child and how their life was changed as a handicapped child. But there are many other stories in this. And so you see again one story from which you can say that for many years Oe could not live on selling his publications. So what was he living? You see, he was living as teachers in cram school. You know, in Japan, if you want to pass the examination to a famous university, you do not just go to school, but in the evening you go to some school where you coaching, learning to pass this exam. So I think this is not the most prestigious occupation in the world to be evening cram school, but this is some way where an intelligent person who has not a good job can make a little money. So he lived some period in his life on doing this. And then he was telling a story. He was walking on the street, and then he saw the man walking there, whose son was was expected to get in a big famous university by coming to this cram school. But it hasn't worked, you see. Also, he was working so hard in the cram school. His son got never in a good university. And now Mr. Oe felt very much afraid of meeting and talking this person, for this investment. Education was a failure, so he wanted to disappear on the next corner, not to meet this man. But to his surprise, this man came directly to him and said, "Oh, you are Mr. O. I remember you were teaching my son in cram school." And Mr. O felt even more embarrassed and said, because there was no success. And then, so Mr. O was direct, so he said, "Well, I feel sorry, but I think my teaching has not helped very much with your son." And then this man said to Mr. "Oh, no, you shouldn't talk about this like this. You see, education is always important, and you never know when you get results for this. So I am very happy to you that you helped my son to be more educated." Yeah, although he even hadn't passed, not such a wonderful story like your story. So he even hadn't got in a good university. Yeah, so it means we sometimes have a belief also that getting through in education is something valuable, and it's nice, even if we do not get the social return, you see, visible return for this education. This is something sometimes here, but I think it's not always the game. As you know, you also address this more as one possible option, but not as a mainstream, if I understood correctly.